The storm had been threatening the city all morning, but no one inside the Whitlock mansion seemed to notice, except for the girl who hadn't touched a single meal in 2 weeks. 14-year-old Alina Whitlock sat silently by the tall window of her room, knees pulled to her chest, her eyes fixed on the distant clouds, as if waiting for something only she could see. She was the daughter of one of the country's richest men, billionaire Adrian Whitlock. Yet for days she had refused to speak, refused to smile, and most frightening of all, refused to eat. Doctors came and left. Specialists flew in from different cities. Therapists tried gentle words, soft questions, patient voices. But Alina only shook her head, barely blinking, as if her world had shuttered itself behind a locked door. No one knew why. No one could reach her. And Adrian Whitlock, who had solved business crises worth billions, couldn't solve the one happening inside his own home. The mansion had grown quieter since Alina's silence began. Staff walked softly. Conversations fell to whispers, and even the sound of utensils in the kitchen felt too loud. Adrian spent most nights standing outside his daughter's door, afraid to step in, afraid not to. The pain in his eyes softened the image of a man known for his power and authority. To the world, he was a billionaire who built empires. Inside his home, he was just a father watching his daughter fade. On the morning, everything changed. A small white car rolled up the mansion gates. Nothing like the glossy black vehicles that usually line the driveway. Inside it sat a woman in a simple dress, clutching the strap of her worn bag, her fingers trembling just slightly. Her name was Maya. She was the new maid, hired out of urgency more than choice, because the household had become so unpredictable that the staff kept quitting. Maya didn't look like someone who belonged in a mansion with chandeliers and gold-lined mirrors, but she carried a quiet strength in her eyes. Something calm, something steady, something the house desperately needed. She had no idea what waited for her behind those grand doors. She didn't know about the girl who hadn't eaten, or the billionaire whose world was slipping through his fingers. She only knew she needed the job, and she was willing to work harder than anyone to keep it. The head housekeeper, Mrs. Rowan, met her at the entrance with an expression that revealed more exhaustion than welcome. "We're short-staffed," she said quickly, leading Maya through the hall. "There's a lot to handle. The family is under stress." Maya nodded, unsure how else to respond. She could feel the heaviness in the air, the kind of silence that comes after too many days of fear and waiting. As she passed by the dining room, she saw untouched trays, barely disturbed plates, and a long table that looked like it hadn't hosted a smile in weeks. She hadn't even started her first task when she noticed something strange. A tray of food outside a closed bedroom door at the end of the hallway. A breakfast plate with a silver cover still untouched. Maya paused, looking at it curiously. "That's Alina's room," Mrs. Rowan whispered, almost as if speaking too loudly might break something fragile. "She hasn't eaten. Not at all. Not even water some days." Maya's heart tightened. She didn't know Alina, but the thought of a child refusing food for so long stirred something deep inside her. A concern no job description could prepare her for. What happened to her? Maya asked softly. "No one knows," Mrs. Rowan replied. "And we don't ask questions here unless we want trouble. Just do your work, be respectful, and stay out of the family's private matters." It was meant as a warning, but Maya heard something else in her tone. Fear, maybe helplessness. Something that told her the staff cared, even if they pretended not to. Later that afternoon, Maya carried fresh linens to the hallway when she heard a faint sound from Alina's room, a sound so soft she wasn't sure she imagined it. She stopped walking, listening again. A breath, a muffled gasp, something fragile, something not quite right. Against her better judgment, she stepped closer, before she could lift her hand to knock. The door opened slightly, just enough for her to see a pair of pale eyes staring back at her. Alina's gaze held no anger, no fear, just a deep emptiness that made Maya's own breath catch. "Hi," Maya whispered gently. "I'm Maya. I'm new here." The girl didn't respond, but she didn't close the door either. Maya took that as something. Maybe not hope, but a crack in the wall she had heard about. A tiny one, but it was there. Mrs. Rowan's voice suddenly echoed from down the hall, jolting them both. Alina shut the door quickly. Maya stepped back, pretending she hadn't been anywhere near it. That evening, Adrian Whitlock returned from a meeting he barely remembered attending. His tie was loose, his eyes tired, his mind somewhere else entirely. When he passed the dining room, he stopped. Another untouched plate sat on the table. Another reminder of 2 weeks slipping through his hands. He closed his eyes for a moment, steadying himself before walking toward Alina's room. But when he approached the hallway, he saw something unexpected. Maya, kneeling on the floor, picking up pieces of shattered glass. "What happened?" he asked, his voice sharper than he intended. Maya lowered her head. "I think I startled her when I walked by." "You saw her?" Adrian's tone changed instantly, something desperate pulling through. "Did she say anything? Did she look worse?" Maya didn't know how to answer. She had seen a girl who looked lost, fragile, hurting in ways no doctor had understood. She could lie. She could say nothing. But something in her heart nudged her forward. She looked like someone who needs something real. Maya said softly, "Not more pressure. Not more fear." Adrian stared at her, really stared. It had been days since anyone offered him even a sentence of hope. And this new maid, who had been in the house for only hours, had spoken with certainty he couldn't ignore. "She won't eat," he whispered. "She won't even look at me. And I don't know how to help her anymore." Maya hesitated for a moment. Maybe she's waiting for the one person who still knows how to reach her. Adrian frowned. "Who?" But Maya didn't answer. She couldn't. Not yet. There was something she sensed, something she hadn't fully understood herself. The storm outside finally broke, thunder rolling to the sky as rain hammered against the windows. And somewhere behind her closed door, Alina sat on the floor, clutching an object no one knew she kept, something that held the reason she hadn't eaten in 2 weeks. Something Maya would discover sooner than anyone expected. And what happened next would not only shake the mansion, it would change the billionaire's family forever. Rain kept tapping against the mansion windows long into the night, a steady reminder that something inside the house was shifting even if no one fully understood it yet. Maya lay awake on the small bed in the staff quarters, listening to the distant rumble of thunder. She had only been in the Whitlock mansion for a day, but it already felt like weeks had passed. There was a sadness in the walls, a quiet heaviness that followed her wherever she went. She couldn't stop thinking about the look in Alina's eyes, the way they seemed to hold a story no one else had been able to read. She turned onto her side, replaying Adrian Whitlock's expression earlier. Beneath his sharp voice and businesslike tone, there had been fear. Not the kind that came from money problems or business losses, but the fear of a parent who loved deeply and didn't know how to help. It made Maya wonder what the family had been like before everything changed, before the silence, before the 2 weeks of untouched meals, before the mansion began to feel like a place waiting for answers. The next morning started with muted sunlight and an unusually quiet kitchen. The cook, Mrs. Patel, moved slowly around the counters, her face lined with worry. Maya greeted her softly, and Mrs. Patel offered a tired smile before placing a fresh plate on the tray meant for Alina. "She won't touch it," Mrs. Patel murmured, "but we can't stop trying." Maya carried the tray carefully, her mind racing with thoughts she couldn't fully sort. As she approached Alina's hallway, the familiar tension returned. She paused outside the girl's door, letting her breath steady. She didn't knock. No one was allowed to disturb her unless necessary, so she simply placed the tray gently on the floor. But today, something unusual happened. Before Maya could step away, she heard a quiet shift from behind the door. Not the shuffling she had heard the previous day. This time it sounded almost like someone sitting up quickly, startled or curious. She froze for a moment, her heart beating a little faster. She didn't speak. She didn't move. She just waited. The doorknob twitched, just slightly, as if Alina was thinking about opening it. But something stopped her at the last second. The sound ended quickly, replaced by silence that stretched out across the hallway like a held breath. Maya stepped back slowly, deciding not to push anything. But inside, she felt something she dare not name. Hope, maybe. A tiny spark. A shift. Later. while she was helping Mrs. Rowan with fresh linens. The head housekeeper spoke in a tone that felt heavier than usual. "You were near Lena's room again," she said quietly. Maya nodded, unsure she had made a mistake. Mrs. Rowan sighed. "You're new. You don't know the whole picture yet. But be careful. Mr. Whitlock is under a lot of pressure, and he gets protective when it comes to his daughter." "I understand," Maya said softly. "I won't break any rules." "It's not just rules," Mrs. Rowan continued. "There's something about Alina's condition that's been kept very private. Something delicate." Maya wanted to ask what she meant, but she sensed a hesitation. No one wanted to say too much. Nobody wanted to guess wrong. She simply nodded and returned to her work, carrying more questions and answers. Down the hall, Adrian Whitlock stood quietly outside his daughter's door again. He hadn't slept much, and the faint shadows under his eyes made him look older than usual. He had spent days trying to figure out what had gone wrong. What moment triggered this silence and refusal to eat? But every memory blurred into another, and nothing gave him a clear picture. He leaned his forehead against the door gently, speaking in a whisper he hoped wouldn't scare her. "Alina, if you need anything, I'm right here. Always." There was no reply, but he stayed for several minutes anyway. Sometimes being close was the only thing he could offer. When he turned to leave, he saw Maya standing quietly at the end of the hallway, holding a basket of folded towels. She lowered her eyes respectfully. Adrian hesitated for a moment before walking toward her. "You heard that?" he asked. "No," Maya replied softly. "Just saw you standing there." Adrian studied her face, trying to understand what made her presence feel different from everyone else's. She looked nervous, unsure, but also sincere. He wasn't used to that. Most people in his life measured their words, chose them carefully, or waited for his reaction before speaking. Maya didn't do any of that. She simply spoke from the heart. "I know you saw Alina yesterday," Adrian said, "and you didn't look away from the truth. Most people do." Maya held the basket a little tighter. She looked tired, like she's carrying something heavy. "I didn't want to upset her." "You didn't," Adrian said. "If anything, she reacted more to you than she has to anyone else in days." Maya didn't know how to respond. She wasn't a therapist or a specialist. She was just a maid trying to do her job. But something about Alina made her feel connected, as if she had walked into the girl's story without meaning to. Before she could speak again, a soft knock echoed from downstairs. It was unusual at this hour. Staff members froze for a moment, exchanging uneasy glances. Adrian walked quickly to the entrance hall and opened the door himself. A delivery man stood outside, dripping from the rain, holding a small envelope. "Delivery for Mr. Whitlock," he said. Adrian took the envelope, thanked the man, and closed the door. The envelope was unmarked. No name, no return address, just his name written in hurried handwriting. His heartbeat quickened, barely noticeable to anyone else, but strong enough for him to feel. He opened it slowly. Inside was a single sheet of paper with a message written in uneven lines. "She knows what happened. She remembers more than you think, and she is terrified." Adrian's breath caught. His first instinct was to hide it, to keep it to himself, but a chill moved through him, something deeper than fear. Someone out there knew something about Alina's sudden silence. Something he didn't. Maya, who had stepped closer after seeing his expression change, noticed the paper trembling slightly in his hand. "Is everything okay?" she asked softly. Adrian folded the note quickly. "It's nothing. Probably just a mistake." But Maya didn't believe that, not fully. There was tension in his voice that hadn't been there before. Something new had entered the story, and she felt it tugging at her from all directions. Upstairs, Alina sat on the floor of her room, rainlight shimmering across her pale face. In her hands was the object she had been hiding since the day everything changed. She traced its surface slowly, her fingers trembling. The house breathed quietly around her. The storm softened, and for the first time in days, a single tear slipped down her cheek. Downstairs, Maya felt a strange pull in her chest, like someone whispering her name without making a sound. Something was coming. Something the mansion wasn't ready for. And Maya, she would be caught at the center of it long before anyone understood why. The rest of the day passed with a strange sort of quiet, as if the mansion itself was listening for something. The rain had softened outside, but the air inside still felt heavy. Maya moved through her tasks with steady hands, yet her thoughts kept circling back to the odd envelope Adrian had received. The way he folded it too quickly, the tension in his jaw, the way he avoided her eyes afterward. Something was wrong, and whatever it was, it had begun long before she arrived. Later, while dusting the tall shelves in the library, Maya found herself studying the family photos arranged neatly along the cabinet. There were pictures of Alina from years before, smiling at birthdays, holding a puppy, standing proudly with her parents on vacation. In every photo, her eyes sparkled with a quiet confidence. But one photo caught Maya's attention more than the others. A framed picture of Alina with a girl who looked slightly older than her, both laughing and holding ice cream cones. Maya picked up gently. Mrs. Rowan appeared in the doorway at that moment, her expression unreadable. "That was taken 3 years ago," Mrs. Rowan said quietly. "Alina and her cousin, Leora. They were inseparable." Maya smiled faintly. "They looked very close." "They were." Mrs. Rowan's voice softened. "Leora stayed with the family every summer. She was like a sister to Alina." Maya turned toward her, sensing more behind the story. "What happened? They don't seem to talk anymore." Mrs. Rowan hesitated, her fingers tightening around the clipboard she held. "There was an accident last year. A car crash. Leora was in it." She paused, choosing her words carefully. "She survived, but she hasn't been the same. And Alina was there too." The room suddenly felt colder. Maya's breath caught. Was she hurt? "Not physically," Mrs. Rowan said, "but the emotional shock was significant. No one knows exactly what she witnessed or how much she remembers. She refused to talk about it. Even therapy sessions didn't help much." Maya slowly placed the photo back on the shelf. She could almost feel the weight of that moment. The pain of seeing someone you love in danger, the helplessness, the imprint trauma leaves on a mind still growing. She had seen people break under far less. "Is that why she stopped eating?" Maya asked softly. Mrs. Rowan shook her head. "No, she was doing better for a while. Quiet, withdrawn, but better. The eating stopped only 2 weeks ago. Something triggered it." Maya nodded, though unease crawled up her spine. "Do you think the note Mr. Whitlock got today has something to do with it?" Mrs. Rowan stiffened. "You saw that." "Just his reaction," Maya said quickly. "Nothing else." Mrs. Rowan sighed again, but this time it was heavier. "This family has more eyes on them than you can imagine. Business rivals, media, strangers. Sometimes they get strange letters. But Mr. Whitlock is worried, very worried, because this one mentioned Alina." Maya's gaze drifted toward the hallway, toward the room where the girl sat alone. Suddenly everything felt connected. The silence, the fear, the envelope, the hidden object in Alina's hands. Upstairs, Adrian was in his study, staring at the folded note on his desk. His fingers hovered over it like he was afraid to touch it again. He replayed the words in his mind. "She knows what happened." What did she know? What had she seen that he didn't? He felt a familiar twist of guilt, something he rarely admitted even to himself. There had been secrets behind that accident. Conversations that never reached the public. Details buried for the sake of protecting the family. Was someone using that against him now? He leaned back in his chair, rubbing his forehead. The empire he built felt steady everywhere, except the one place that mattered most. Home. A faint knock broke his thoughts. Maya stood in the doorway, holding a stack of clean towels. "I can come back," she said gently. "No," Adrian replied, his voice calmer than before. "It's fine. Thank you." She stepped inside slowly, placing the towels on the shelf by the wall. "If there's anything I can do for Alina," she said, choosing her words carefully, "I'll do it, even if it's something small." Adrian studied her face again, searching for something he still couldn't name. "You've been here less than a week," he said softly. "Most people stay distant, but you look at her as if you understand more than the rest of us." Maya lowered her eyes. I know what it's like to lose someone close. To carry something you don't know how to talk about. Adrian didn't ask for details. He sensed a boundary and respected it, but the sincerity in her voice lingered. Suddenly, a loud sound echoed from upstairs, a sharp crash, followed by a thud. Adrian jumped to his feet, and Maya rushed behind him as he sprinted toward the hallway. Mrs. Rowan appeared at the top of the stairs, panic on her face. It came from Alina's room, she cried. Adrian's heart pounded as he reached the door. He knocked urgently. Alina, it's Dad. Are you all right? Silence. Then another soft sound, almost like the scraping of wood against the floor. Adrian twisted the handle, but the door didn't budge, locked from the inside. Alina, open the door, he pleaded, his voice trembling. Please. Maya stepped closer, her own heartbeat thudding in her ears. She pressed her ear gently to the door. At first, she heard nothing. Then, barely there, a whisper, not words, not a cry, just a fragile, broken breath. She's scared, Maya whispered. Adrian swallowed hard. He'd heard fear in boardrooms, lies in negotiations, but the fear behind that door was something else entirely. Something raw. Move back, he said, trying to steady himself. But before he could do anything, the lock clicked. The door opened an inch, just enough for a pale eye to appear in the gap. Adrian froze, relief and heartbreak twisting together. Alina, but the eye didn't move to him. It moved to Maya. The girl's trembling voice slipped through the crack, barely louder than the rain outside. It wasn't supposed to come back, she whispered. Maya's blood ran cold. What wasn't? Before Alina could answer, a shadow passed behind her in the room. Just a flicker, but enough to make her flinch and slam the door shut again. Adrian grabbed the handle. Alina, open it. But she didn't. The silence returned, thicker than before, heavier, unmistakably filled with fear. Maya backed away slowly, her pulse racing. She had seen something in Alina's eyes. Not just grief, not just trauma, recognition, and something else, like she had been waiting for someone to understand a secret she had been carrying alone. Meanwhile, outside the mansion, across the street, hidden in the shadow of the tall trees, someone watched the house carefully, a figure with a dark umbrella and a posture too still to be casual. They weren't there to admire the mansion. They were waiting for the moment their message reached the right person. And inside the house, Maya felt the air shift again, an unspoken warning whispering at the edges of her thoughts. Whatever this family was hiding, it wasn't finished with them, not even close. The rest of the evening moved with a nervous sort of energy, as if everyone in the mansion sensed that something had shifted. Adrian tried to act calm, but his hands trembled when he thought no one was looking. Mrs. Rowan kept checking the hallway every few minutes, listening for any sign from Alina's room. Even the usually steady staff walked more quietly, their eyes flicking toward the staircase as if they expected something else to happen. Maya felt all of it, and deep inside, she felt something else too, like she had stepped into the middle of a story she wasn't supposed to see yet. The image of Alina's terrified eyes staring through the crack in the door kept replaying in her mind, along with the trembling words. It wasn't supposed to come back. Those words clung to her like a warning. She didn't fully understand. Later that night, when the mansion finally dimmed and the staff retired to their rooms, Maya couldn't sleep. She sat near her small window, hugging her knees, staring at the distant glow of the streetlights. Her thoughts tangled with worry for the girl upstairs. She didn't understand the full truth, but she knew something was haunting Alina, something more than grief or trauma. When she finally lay down, a soft sound drifted to the vent on her wall. At first she thought she was imagining it. Then it came again, a muffled sob, a pause, and another. Maya shot upright. The vent connected to the east hallway, the hallway near Alina's room. She hesitated only a second before slipping out of bed and tiptoeing into the hall. The mansion was dark and quiet, the kind of quiet that made every step feel louder than it should. She followed the faint sound until she reached the corner near Alina's door. There was again a soft, helpless crying. "Alina?" Maya whispered gently. The crying stopped instantly. For a moment, the silence was so complete, that Maya wondered if she had imagined everything. But then a faint shuffle sounded from inside the room, followed by a fragile whisper that barely made it through the door. "Is it gone?" Maya leaned closer, barely breathing. "Is what gone?" There was a pause, and then Alina whispered again, her voice trembling. "The thing from the car." Maya's skin prickled. She had no idea what the girl meant, but the fear in her tone was real, raw, and trembling. "Do you want to open the door?" Maya asked softly, but instead of answering, Alina's voice turned urgent. "Don't stand there. It listens." Maya stepped back instinctively. Her heart pounded, and for a moment she felt a strange unease, as if someone else was in the hallway with her. She glanced around quickly, but the corridor was empty. Then, suddenly, footsteps echoed from behind her. She spun around to see Adrian approaching with a surprised expression. "Maya," he whispered, "what are you doing here?" She pointed to Alina's door. "I heard her crying. She said something strange." Adrian's face tightened. "Strange how?" "Something about something from the car," Maya said. She sounded terrified. A heavy silence fell between them. Adrian closed his eyes for a moment, as if bracing himself against something he already suspected. "She's remembering more," he murmured. "Remembering what?" Maya asked softly. Before he could answer, a sudden thump sounded from inside Alina's room, heavy enough to make Maya flinch, and Adrian rushed forward. He pressed his hand against the door. "Alina," he called. "Alina, answer me." But there was no reply. Another thump, this time softer but deliberate. Adrian tried the handle. Still locked. Maya felt something twist inside her chest. "She's scared," she whispered. Adrian looked at the door like he was ready to break it down, but then he noticed something odd, something that made him freeze. The light under the door flickered. Not like a lamp, not like a shadow passing. It flickered as if something was moving in front of the light in slow, uneven motions. Adrian stepped back, alarmed. "That never happens." "What do you mean?" Maya asked, voice shaking. "That room only has one lamp on at night," he said. "It doesn't flicker." The light flickered again. Maya took a step closer, feeling a chill creep up her arms. "Something is inside with her?" Adrian didn't answer, but his silence said enough. Before either of them could react, Alina screamed. It wasn't loud. It wasn't even long. It was the sound of a child who had just seen something she couldn't process, something she had been trying to avoid for days. Adrian rammed his shoulder against the door. Once, twice. On the third hit, the lock cracked and the door flew inward. Maya rushed in behind him, but what she saw made her freeze in place. Alina sat on the floor, her knees pulled to her chest, her eyes wide and full of terror. Her lamp lay on the ground, broken. Papers were scattered everywhere. Drawings Maya hadn't seen before. Drawings of a car, of shattered glass, of shadows with no faces. But that wasn't what made Maya's breath catch. Alina was pointing at the far corner of the room, the darkest one, where the shadows collected. "Don't let it touch me," she whispered. Adrian followed her gaze, but he only saw empty space. Maya saw nothing, too. But the air in that corner felt wrong, heavy, cold, pressing outward like someone was standing there without being seen. Adrian rushed to Alina, pulling her into his arms. She held on to him, trembling uncontrollably. Maya slowly approached one of the drawings on the floor. Her hands shook as she picked it up. The drawing showed a car on a dark, rainy night. The front passenger door was open, and standing outside the car was a tall, indistinct figure, drawn completely in black. But it was the last detail that made Maya's stomach twist. The figure wasn't facing the car. It was facing the viewer, facing whoever looked at the drawing. As she stared at it, a drop of water fell onto the paper. Maya flinched. Then she looked up. There were no leaks in the ceiling, no water anywhere. But the drop of water had fallen anyway, as if it came out of nowhere. Behind her, Adrian was trying to calm his daughter, whispering quietly, "You're safe. I'm here. It's okay." But Alina kept shaking her head, whispering the same words over and over. "It followed me. It followed me home. And it wants to tell the truth." Outside, The wind picked up suddenly, rattling the window frames and sweeping to the trees with a force that made the entire house tremble. And somewhere beyond the gate, the same figure who had been watching earlier stepped out of the shadows, lifting their phone as if waiting for the exact moment to make their move. Inside, Maya felt the air thicken again, the same pressure from before, but stronger now. Whatever had been haunting Alina wasn't done. It was only getting closer. The house didn't calm down after that. If anything, the tension tightened like a rope pulled too hard. Adrian carried Alina to his room, so she wouldn't be alone, and Mrs. Rowan rushed to call the family doctor again. But even as they tried to manage the situation, Maya felt something else, something they were all trying not to say out loud. This wasn't just emotional trauma. Something bigger was happening. When Maya stepped into the hallway to catch her breath, she noticed the drawings still scattered inside Alina's room. She crouched down and picked up another one. It showed the same dark figure, but this time there was something new in the background. A house. Their house. The mansion. And at the corner of the page, in shaky handwriting, Alina had written, "It's already inside." Maya's hands went cold. She felt an urge to bring the drawing to Adrian, but something stopped her. A quiet instinct told her to hold on to it for now. Something wasn't adding up. Someone else knew more than they were saying. She tucked the drawing into her pocket and hurried downstairs to clear her head. But halfway down the staircase, a sharp sound echoed, like a phone vibrating on a hard surface. She turned and followed the noise to a small side table at the bottom of the stairs. A phone she didn't recognize lay there, screen glowing. The wallpaper was plain black. No notifications. No name on the lock screen. Nothing. But the oddest part was the fact that the phone was still warm, as if someone had just set it down moments before. She picked it up slowly. The device vibrated again. A message flashed across the screen, even though it wasn't unlocked. "Seen enough yet?" Maya's heart slammed against her ribs. She took a step back, staring at the message as new words appeared on their own. "Go to the basement." Her breath caught. She looked up the staircase, half expecting to see someone watching her. But the mansion was silent, almost too silent. Before she could think twice, she put the phone down exactly where she found it, turned, and began walking toward the basement door behind the kitchen. Every light she passed flickered for half a second, like the house was reacting to her decision. At the basement door, she hesitated. She wasn't supposed to go there. Mrs. Rowan had said early on that certain areas were staff restricted. But now Maya felt drawn to it. The phone's message wasn't random. Someone wanted her to see something. She placed her hand on the cold brass handle and pulled it open. A rush of cool air met her face. The basement light was already on. She stepped inside and closed the door behind her, listening to the slow hum of the house above. The stairs creaked beneath her weight as she descended. The lower she went, the darker it felt, despite the lights overhead. At the bottom, she froze. The basement wasn't empty. Stacks of boxes filled one side, old furniture another, but in the center of the room was a large metal filing cabinet, one that looked newer than everything else around it. It didn't belong. Maya approached it cautiously. There were papers scattered on top of it, as if someone had been going through them recently. She reached out and picked up the first page. Her breath hitched. It was a hospital discharge summary for a patient named Leora Whitlock, Alina's cousin, the one from the accident. Maya picked up another paper, her pulse climbing. A therapy note. Patient reports seeing a figure at night, claims it follows her, triggers panic attacks. Strong fear associated with the accident. Another paper beneath it. Patient believes someone tried to harm her the night of the crash. Maya swallowed hard. This wasn't a simple accident. Her eyes fell on the final page, one covered in red ink and hurried handwriting. Words scrawled across the page in a way that didn't look like a doctor or therapist. It looked almost desperate. She knows the truth. She saw who was on the road that night. This family isn't safe. Before Maya could read more, a sound echoed behind her. A soft click. The basement door. Someone had opened it. Her breath caught as she spun around. Footsteps coming down slowly, one step at a time. Shadows stretched long across the stairs, but no face appeared yet. Her heartbeat hammered in her ears. "Maya," came a voice. She exhaled shakily. It was Adrian, but something about his tone made her skin prickle. He stepped off the final stair, his expression caught between shock and something unreadable as he saw what was in her hands. "Where did you get those?" he asked quietly. There was no anger in his voice, just fear. Maya lifted the papers slightly. "These were out in the open. Someone left them here for me." Adrian stepped closer, rubbing his forehead. "You shouldn't be down here. This room, it's supposed to be locked." "It wasn't tonight," Maya replied. He stopped walking, eyes narrowing as if trying to piece something together. "Someone opened it." "I think someone wanted me to find these," she whispered. Before Adrian could respond, the basement light flickered hard, once, twice, then went out completely. The room plunged into darkness. Adrian grabbed Maya's arm instinctively. "Stay close." But Maya didn't need the warning. She could feel the shift in the air, a presence that didn't belong, something watching them from the shadows. Her breath came out in short bursts as she tried to adjust to the darkness. A faint glow appeared across the room, just enough to pick up a shape. Not a person. Not clearly. Just a silhouette, standing perfectly still near the filing cabinet. Adrian whispered, "Who's there?" The silhouette didn't move, didn't breathe, didn't flinch. Then, slowly, the glow faded, like it had never been there. Maya couldn't speak. Adrian tightened his grip on her arm and tried the light switch again. Nothing. Upstairs, a loud crash echoed through the house. It sounded like something, or someone, had knocked over a heavy piece of furniture. Adrian and Maya exchanged a glance and sprinted up the stairs, stumbling into the hallway. The house felt alive with chaos, voices shouting, footsteps rushing, doors opening. And then Mrs. Rowan appeared at the top of the stairs, pale and breathless. "It's Alina!" she cried out. "She's missing!" Maya's world stopped. Adrian's face drained of color. "How?" he demanded, rushing forward. Mrs. Rowan shook her head frantically. "We don't know. They said they were watching her. She was sleeping. But when they checked again, she was gone. The window was open." All at once, the pieces snapped together in Maya's mind. The drawings, the messages, the figure watching from outside, the basement papers, the strange flicker of light in Alina's room. This wasn't just fear or memory. Someone was orchestrating all of it. Someone who knew the truth about the crash. Someone who wanted Alina. Before she could voice any of this, the front door of the mansion slammed open with a force that shook the walls. Wind swept into the foyer, and a shadow crossed the threshold. Someone had come inside. Someone who had been waiting for this exact moment. The stakes had just changed. Ava's voice hung in the air, trembling but steady enough to pull every pair of eyes toward her. The room stayed silent for a long moment, as if the truth she had carried for weeks needed space to settle. Mr. Harrington's expression softened, though the shock in his eyes didn't fade. He took a slow step toward her daughter, but Ava moved just enough to stay between him and Lily. Not in defiance, but in quiet protection. Lily stayed curled against Ava's side, her small hands clinging to Maid's apron like she finally understood she wasn't alone. Mr. Harrington's breath shook as he lowered himself to one knee. He didn't reach for Lily. He didn't touch her. He simply looked into her eyes with the kind of guilt only a father could carry. "Lily," he whispered, "why didn't you tell me? Why didn't you come to me?" Lily's lip trembled, and she buried her face deeper into Ava's side. Ava gently stroked her hair, her voice low and warm, because she thought it would make everything worse. She glanced up at the billionaire, then back at the girl. She wasn't avoiding food because she was sick. She was scared. She felt like she didn't have a place in her own home. A breath slipped from Lily, small, fragile, but honest. "I thought if I stayed quiet, he wouldn't be mad at me anymore." The billionaire's eyes widened as the pieces finally connected. The strict schedules, the pressure, the endless expectations he assumed were helping her cope. He didn't realize he had created a world where she couldn't breathe. His voice broke. "Lily, I was never angry at you. I thought I was helping. I'm so sorry." Lily peered up, and for the first time, Her expression wasn't filled with fear, but confusion, relief, and hesitation tangled together. Ava gently nudged her. "It's okay," she whispered. "He's listening now." That small sentence, simple as it was, cracked something open in the room. Mr. Harrington nodded, eyes red. "I should have listened sooner. I should have seen you." Lily's fingers tightened in Ava's apron. Then, almost painfully slowly, she stepped forward. Just one step. The billionaire didn't move except to open his arms slightly, an invitation, not a demand. Lily's feet dragged across the floor until she reached him, standing just inches away. Her voice came out as tiny as her frame. "I didn't want to disappoint you." He broke, truly broke. He folded his arms around her carefully, as if hugging something made of glass. Lily leaned into him, and Ava's heart clenched. For the first time, the girl didn't look afraid. She looked held. The family doctor took a quiet step back, allowing the moment to bloom without interruption. Maya and the other staff peeked from the doorway, their eyes softening as warmth finally filled the cold halls. When Mr. Harrington finally rose with Lily in his arms, he turned to Ava, the woman who had done what no specialist, therapist, or expensive expert could do. He looked at her with something more genuine than gratitude. "Ava," he said, voice steadying, "you saved my daughter." Ava shook her head. She saved herself. I just made space for her to feel safe. But the billionaire wasn't convinced. He knew the truth. Without Ava, none of this would have happened. He shifted Lily gently and spoke again, carefully, as if choosing each word with intention. "From today forward, everything changes. For her. For all of us." Ava nodded, though she didn't know exactly what he meant. But she felt something shifting, like the mansion itself was letting out the breath it had been holding for weeks. Just then, Dr. Ellis took a calm step forward. "Lily," he said softly, "you've done something very brave today, and I'm proud of you." She managed the smallest smile, her first real one in weeks. But before the relief could settle, a sudden knock echoed through the hallway. Firm, unexpected. Mr. Harrington frowned. At this hour, a security guard hurried in, breathing a little too fast. "Sir, there's someone you need to see. They said it's urgent. Something about Lily." A chill sliced through the room. Ava's eyes shot toward the billionaire, and his grip tightened slightly around his daughter. Lily froze. The fragile calm she had found threatened all over again. "Who is it?" he asked. The guard hesitated. "They wouldn't give a name, but they said you'd understand when you saw them." Ava felt her stomach twist. She stepped instinctively closer to the billionaire and Lily, her protective instinct returning so sharply it almost hurt. Mr. Harrington nodded for them to stay close and followed the guard toward the foyer, Ava beside him, Lily clinging tightly to her father this time. Not out of fear of him, but fear the unknown. As they approached the entrance, the lights suddenly flickered, shadows shifting across the marble floor. Outside the glass door stood a lone figure, hands in pockets, head lowered. The night air behind him seemed heavy, thick, almost humming with tension. Ava swallowed. Something about the man's stance felt familiar, but wrong. When the door finally opened, the man lifted his head slowly, and in that instant, Ava felt her breath catch. It wasn't a stranger. It wasn't a doctor. It wasn't a reporter. It was someone who should have never been standing on the billionaire's doorstep at all. Someone Lily hadn't spoken about, but had been silently terrified of. Mr. Harrington's face turned completely pale. "Why are you here?" he whispered. The man stepped forward, eyes cold, voice low and unsettlingly calm. "I think it's time we talk about what really happened. The night Lily stopped eating." Ava's heart pounded, and she instinctively reached for Lily's hand. The billionaire held his daughter tighter, and in the doorway, with the rain starting to fall behind him, the man gave a small, chilling smile, one that promised a truth he brought would change everything they thought they understood. The final twist had arrived, and it wasn't gentle. The rain behind the man thickened, blurring the night into a gray curtain as he stepped inside. Ava felt Lily tighten her grip on her father's shirt, her small hands trembling even though she tried her best to hide it. Mr. Harrington didn't move at first. His jaw was tight, his shoulders tense, but his eyes stayed fixed on a familiar figure standing under the chandelier's soft glow. Everything in the room felt slowed, stretched, as if the mansion itself was bracing for whatever truth was finally about to surface. The man cleared his throat lightly, not in arrogance, but in discomfort, as if even he wasn't sure how to start. The billionaire studied him with a weighted stare. "Marcus, you shouldn't be here." Ava's breath caught. She had heard the name before, mentioned briefly in old conversations. The family friend who used to help around the mansion. The man whose sudden disappearance 2 months ago had raised questions but no answers. Now here he was, standing at the center of everything Lily had been quietly carrying. Marcus didn't move closer. Instead, he kept a respectful distance, the tension in his shoulders suggesting he knew the gravity of stepping into this home again. He looked at Lily, and she flinched, turning her face into her father's chest. Marcus nodded, as if expecting that reaction. "I didn't come to scare her," he said softly. "I came because it's time to end this." Mr. Harrington held Lily tight, one hand gently cupping the back of her head. "Then talk," he said, "because she deserves the truth." Marcus took a slow breath. "What happened wasn't what anyone thought. I made a mistake. A terrible one." His eyes shifted to Ava, then back to the billionaire. "The day Lily stopped eating, I didn't hurt her. I didn't yell at her. I didn't threaten her." He swallowed, the guilt visibly pulling at his face. "I told her something she wasn't ready to hear." Ava felt her heart tense. "What did you tell her?" Marcus hesitated, looking down at his shoes as if the memory itself stung. "I told her that she didn't have to be strong all the time, that she didn't always have to be perfect, that it was okay to break down, to cry, to tell her dad when she felt lonely." He ran a hand through his damp hair. "But she misunderstood. She thought I meant she wasn't good enough." Mr. Harrington's face softened with shock and regret. "She thought you meant she was failing me." Marcus nodded, his voice barely above a whisper. "She looked so scared. I tried to explain, but she ran before I could say more. And when I told one of the senior staff what happened, they told me to leave it alone, that things were delicate in the house. I thought giving the family space was the best thing, but leaving made it worse." Ava glanced at Lily, who was staring up at Marcus now, her eyes full of old confusion and fading fear. "Why didn't you tell anyone sooner?" Ava asked. Marcus's shoulders sagged. "Because I thought I caused damage that couldn't be fixed, and because I assumed Mr. Harrington wouldn't want me anywhere near his daughter again." For the first time, the billionaire's expression softened in a way that wasn't anger or defensiveness. It was exhaustion. "Marcus, I created an environment where my daughter felt she had to be perfect all the time. You were the only one who told her it was okay not to be, and she didn't know how to process that." He rubbed Lily's back slowly. "This wasn't your fault. It was mine." A long silence followed before Marcus finally lifted his head. "Is she okay now?" Lily took a small breath, still clutching her father's shirt, but she lifted her chin enough to speak. Her voice was soft but clear. "I thought you were telling me Daddy was tired of me." Marcus's eyes widened. "Lily, no. I was trying to tell you the opposite. That your dad loves you even when you're sad or scared or not okay." He placed a hand over his heart. "I'm so sorry I made you feel like you had to disappear." Lily blinked up at him, as if seeing him with new understanding. She leaned back into her father, but she didn't hide anymore. Her breathing steadied, her fear slowly untying itself from her chest. Mr. Harrington let out a deep breath. "If we're going to move forward," he said gently, "it needs to be together, with honesty." He looked at Marcus. "You should have come sooner, but you came now, and that matters." Ava felt the tension in her chest loosen for the first time in what felt like hours. The mansion, once heavy with fear and silence, finally felt like a place where healing could begin. Marcus stepped back, giving them space. "I just needed to make sure she knew the truth," he said, "and that she's safe." He turned to Ava. "Thank you for taking care of her in ways none of us understood." Ava offered a small, warm smile. She just needed someone who would listen. Mr. Harrington nodded, looking between the two of them. "Ava didn't just take care of her. She saved her. She saved us." His voice softened. and I intend to make sure she stays here as long as she wants." Ava blinked, startled by the emotion in his tone. She wasn't expecting gratitude, but the sincerity in his eyes was real, steady, and deeply human. Marcus gave a final nod, stepping toward the door. "If you need anything, I'll help however I can. This time, properly." He glanced down at Lily. "Take care, kiddo." Lily didn't speak, but she gave the smallest nod, her eyes calm. Marcus left into the rain, closing the chapter he had unknowingly opened months ago. As the door shut, Mr. Harrington lifted Lily into his arms, holding her close but gently, as if safeguarding something precious. "No more secrets," he whispered to her. "No more pressure. No more loneliness." Ava watched them, warmth filling her chest. She had seen families fall apart for far less. And somehow, this one was finding its way back together. Later that night, after the house grew quiet, Mr. Harrington found Ava in the kitchen, wiping down the counter, even though it was spotless. "Ava," he said softly, "I meant what I said earlier. Everything is going to change." She looked up, unsure. "For the better, I hope." "For the better," he confirmed. "Lily trusts you, and I trust you. I want you to stay, not just as a maid, but as someone who helps us build a healthier home." His voice held gratitude that didn't need explaining. "You reminded us what compassion looks like." Ava smiled, her heart full. "I'm not perfect," she said, "but I care. That's all I know how to do." "And that," he replied, "is exactly what this house needs." As the lights dimmed and the mansion settled into a peaceful quiet, Lily slept soundly for the first time in weeks. Her small frame relaxed, her nightmares finally fading into something softer. Ava stood outside her door for a moment, listening to the gentle rhythm of her breathing. It was a sound of healing, of courage, of a little girl finally finding her place in the world again. And in that quiet moment, Ava realized something simple yet powerful. Sometimes the impossible isn't a miracle. Sometimes it's just kindness, given at the right time by the right person in the right way. And in this home, that kindness had changed everything.